Change is power. Change, a word so small, so ordinary, and yet so utterly full of tension. We resist it, we crave it, we fear it, we chase it. We call it a storm, a breakthrough, a breakdown, a new chapter. We say it's the only constant, and still, it startles us every single time. But let me offer you a new lens, one that doesn't shrink from the mystery of change, but leans into it with reverence. What if change isn't something that happens to you at all? What if it's something far more intimate, far more internal than we usually allow ourselves to believe? What if change isn't an external storm that arrives without warning, but a seed that has always lived quietly inside of you, waiting for the right conditions to bloom, waiting for the courage to be noticed, waiting for your permission to grow roots deeper than fear? Because here's the deeper truth. Change is not an invader, it's an awakening. If that resonates with you, if something deep inside you aches with recognition, you're not alone. This isn't just another video for the feed, another piece of content to scroll past. This was made with someone like you in mind. Someone who's tired, maybe not in body, but in spirit. Someone who needs to hear that their quiet strength matters, even when it's unseen. Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. It doesn't come from outside your life, outside your body, outside your soul. It rises from within, often disguised as restlessness, discomfort, longing, or loss. It wears many faces, but its voice is always familiar, because it's yours. Change is not a thief, it's a revealer. It doesn't steal who you are, it strips away who you are not. And I know, we've been taught to see change as something to manage, something to brace for like a wave about to crash. We speak about it like it's an unpredictable force, something that disrupts the comfort we've built. But what if change is not a disruption at all? What if it's a return to your deeper intelligence, a return to the parts of you that got buried beneath coping and conditioning, a return to the quiet truths you stopped listening to because survival asked you to be louder than your own soul? The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And perhaps this is the spiritual dimension of change. To become free, we must become responsible for our own becoming. Not in a way that demands control over life's events, but in a way that accepts ownership of our response to them. Change, then, isn't just something that lands in your lap. It's something that begins in your breath, your awareness, your willingness to listen to your inner life more closely than the noise around you. It's not a guest you didn't invite. It's the part of you that has been knocking at your own door, asking to come home. So don't be afraid of it. Don't call it chaos when it might be clarity in disguise. Don't assume it's the world trying to undo you, when it may be your own soul trying to rebuild you. Change is not a punishment. It is power. Not a power that dominates or controls, but a quiet power. The kind rooted in truth. The kind that doesn't shout but hums gently. I'm still here. I'm still becoming. You see, most of us grew up with a very narrow definition of power. We were taught, directly and indirectly, that power looks like control. That to be strong means to be unmoved, to grip tightly, to push through, to remain unchanged no matter the storm. We celebrate those who endure without breaking. We admire the ones who stay strong in the face of pain. We romanticize resilience as resistance, as if clenching our jaw and refusing to shift is a sign of inner strength. But let's take a deeper look. True power, soul deep, quiet, enduring power, does not live in the clenched fist. It lives in the open palm. It lives in flexibility, in movement, in the sacred ability to respond to life rather than brace against it. Not to collapse, but to bend. Not to break, but to let go where letting go is what wisdom requires. Because sometimes strength isn't staying the same. Sometimes strength is becoming something new. Let me tell you a story. There was once a woman named Mira who lived in a small, weather-worn village by the sea. Her house, a humble structure passed down through generations, stood right at the edge of the shore. She was known in her village as unshakable, strong-willed, firm in her beliefs, fiercely rooted in her routines. She woke each morning at the same time, drank the same tea, walked the same path along the beach. But one year, the tides began to change. Stronger storms rolled in. The winds grew unpredictable. The sea, once calm and familiar, grew wild and moody. Her neighbors adapted. They moved their homes inland. They reinforced their roofs. They shifted with the weather. But Mira stood firm. This house has stood for 50 years. Shwum. Elias took pride in his reputation. Every piece he made was the same, balanced, precise, comfortable. He believed in tradition, in not fixing what wasn't broken. But something began to shift, subtly at first. His hands, once steady, trembled slightly. He found himself daydreaming about curved shapes, unusual grains, even driftwood, ideas that didn't belong in his well-ordered world. He ignored them. Weeks passed. The tremble worsened. The ideas didn't leave. One day, frustrated, he took a walk by the river near his home. It had recently changed course after a heavy season of rain. Whole trees had been uprooted. New paths formed. It looked chaotic, unfamiliar, but it was still beautiful. Even more so, maybe. And then he saw it. A thick piece of driftwood caught between two rocks, smoothed by time, bent by force, shaped by the current. It was imperfect, asymmetrical, alive. He picked it up and brought it back to his shop. For the first time in decades, he didn't follow a plan. He let the wood tell him what it wanted to be. The result was unlike anything he had ever made. It was strange, fluid, honest. He called it becoming, and it sold before he could hang a price tag. From that day on, Elias stopped making the chairs he'd once been known for. Some customers were disappointed, some left, but others came, drawn not to the perfection of what he had always been, but to the truth of who he was finally allowing himself to become. This is the truth the river teaches us, that it's okay to change, that it's necessary to change, that no apology is needed for evolving beyond what others recognize in you. You are not here to stay still. You are here to flow, to carve, to shape the world around you simply by daring to follow the movement within you. Because holding on to who you were, out of fear, out of habit, out of loyalty to a version of yourself that made others comfortable, is not strength. It's stagnation. And the longer you resist your own becoming, the farther you drift from your soul's most honest path. So flow like the river. Be shaped, not shattered. Move, not to escape, but to arrive, again and again, into deeper truth. And remember, change isn't betrayal, it's devotion to the you that is still unfolding. But pause for a moment and look closer. Really look. Not through the lens of regret or expectation, but with the quiet honesty that only stillness can offer. The pain you felt in your life, the ache that clung to you after the goodbye, the weight that sat in your chest during the long, uncertain nights, the hollow feeling that followed a loss. That pain wasn't always from the change itself. It was the resistance, the internal grip, the desperate attempt to hold still while the ground beneath you moved. To remain untouched while life asked you to transform. The breakup didn't break you. The move didn't unmake you. The job loss wasn't the end of your value. The diagnosis wasn't your undoing. Even the silence, the sudden absence of a voice you once depended on, was not the villain. What truly tore you apart was the idea that you had to stay the same through all of it, that you had to keep smiling, that you had to remain composed, unshaken, unchanged. But that's not how souls work. That's not how healing works. And that's certainly not how growth works. You are not a statue meant to be preserved. You are a living, breathing mosaic, meant to shift, to fracture, to be rearranged by time and truth. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that real strength meant consistency, that who you were at 18 should still define who you are at 38, that the dreams you whispered at midnight in your early 20s should somehow still govern the choices you make in your 50s. But life is far too alive for that kind of rigidity. It keeps moving. And so must you. You are allowed, deeply allowed, to let go of old dreams that no longer fit the shape of your becoming. You are allowed to abandon paths that once felt sacred, but now feel suffocating. You are allowed to turn the page before the chapter is neatly closed. You are even allowed, especially allowed, to become someone your past self would hardly recognize. Not because you were wrong then, but because you've expanded since. Growth is not betrayal. It's not a sign of failure. It's not a dismissal of who you once were. It is a deep honoring of the truth that has revealed itself over time. Think of a snake shedding its skin. It does not mourn what's been left behind. It does not carry its past shell in shame. It releases because the container it once lived in can no longer stretch to fit who it's becoming. You too must release. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Because what you are growing into needs more space than your old life can offer. And that's the quiet miracle of it all. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to be willing to expand. So stop shrinking yourself to fit the outlines of old blueprints. Stop twisting your soul to satisfy outdated expectations. And stop apologizing for the ways you've evolved. You were never meant to be one thing. You were never meant to arrive and stay. You were meant to evolve, to soften and sharpen, to unravel and rebuild, to rise and fall and rise again in deeper alignment with who you are now becoming. So if something is falling away, let it. If something within you is shifting, trust it. If the version of you you once knew feels distant, thank it. It brought you this far. But the road ahead, it belongs to the one you're still becoming. And they're not here to repeat the past. They're here to live fully, with presence, with purpose, and with permission to grow. You do not owe the world your sameness. You do not exist to be consistent for the comfort of others. You are not here to uphold an old version of yourself just because that's what people recognize. What you do owe the world, if anything at all, is your truth. And truth, it's not always tidy. It's not always familiar. It doesn't always fit into the identity you've worn like a second skin. Because truth, like you, evolves. It expands as you do. It asks different questions at different seasons of your life. And that's not contradiction. That's wisdom in motion. Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, once said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man." This is the essence of becoming. You are not static. You are not a fixed concept to be preserved. You are a river, shifting, flowing, reshaping banks and stones along the way. You are not meant to be the same version of yourself year after year, decade after decade. And let me say this gently but clearly. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not lost. You are becoming. Becoming is messy. It's non-linear. It doesn't follow a schedule or a checklist. Some days, you'll feel clear. Other days, unsure. Some weeks, you'll build. Others, you'll need to rest, to retreat, to listen to the quiet voice inside that says, "Wait, Not yet. Something is still shifting. And that's okay. Because every ending you thought might destroy you, every goodbye that felt like a loss you couldn't bear, every pivot that felt like failure, every version of your life that dissolved, wasn't the end. It was space being cleared. It was your soul making room for something deeper, more aligned, more alive. Those closed doors? They weren't rejections of your worth. They were redirections of your path. The detours you resented? They were lessons dressed as delays, compassionate interruptions from a life that knew more than your plan allowed. You didn't fall off track. You fell into yourself, into a truth that had been waiting, patiently, for you to grow big enough to hold it. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. You